A lot of people have asked me, why am I here and why am I interested in this? Because I don't work for an animal rescue. I don't work in animal welfare all the time. Obviously, I'm a consultant. And this is why I wanted to be involved in this process. Sandy Reese and I are very good friends, and we're consultants together. We do a lot of work. And she mentioned this conference to me, and she was like, you have to be there because she knows the story of Leo. So I'm going to take just 2 minutes here at the beginning of the conference and tell you Leo's story real quick to let you know where my passion for the work that you do comes. I was driving from Rutherfordton, North Carolina to Hickory, North Carolina, which are respectively in Rutherford County and Catawba County, on Martin Luther King Day about 8.5 years ago. And it's a back road, 2-lane, backcountry road. Lots of people live about 1/4 mile apart. And as I was driving by wearing all white, high-heel leather boots, white pants, corduroys, white sweater, it had been snowing for 3 days. And when I drove past this driveway that was nothing but mud, I looked over and I saw this dog that was, that little C position they sleep in most of the time? That's how he was laying. And I was like, dang, it's like 19 degrees out here. If that dog was dead, you'd think he'd be a little more rigor mortis, maybe kind of stiff. But he wasn't moving. And so as I drove past, I just had this horrible, I have to turn around and check on him. And I've never had a dog before. I didn't have cats or anything at home. That was just me. I traveled a lot, worked a lot. And so I drove back, turned back around, pulled up in the driveway, and when I pulled up in this muddy driveway, I rolled my window down, and I looked, and he wasn't moving at all. But he opened his eyes, and he looked up at me. And I was just like, oh my God, this dog is still alive. So, of course, my super animal-loving self, I start driving around to these houses that are 1/4 mile apart, and I'm like, there's this dog up here, this is what he looks like he's injured, is it yours? The first several houses that I went to, and when I decided to stop going to the houses, the comment that I received was, oh, that dog's been dead for 3 days. Ah! So I was like, oh my God. Well, it's a holiday in North Carolina. Animal control was not open. And so I had called the animal control folks in both counties, and I was on the line of 2 counties. Nobody wanted to help me. And they were like, well, we can dispose of him for you. And I was like, he's not dead. So I called my parents, freaking out. I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I went to a trailer that was close by, and I was like, I need a trash bag, because my car wasn't equipped with anything for animal rescue. And I was like, I need something to scoop this dog up on and put him in my car. So this really nice fella gave me one of those big black trash bags, and he came and helped me, because of course I didn't know if he was going to be aggressive or whatever. And so we scooped him up. I found an emergency vet 30 miles away, and I sped like a speed demon for 30 minutes to get him to this emergency vet, and it was like a scene out of MASH. How many people have seen MASH? With the helicopters, they brought this tiny little dog stretcher out. I couldn't laugh at the time, but looking back on it, I can. And they were like, okay, they pulled it up to my car, and they were like getting him out, putting him on the stretcher, and walking him back in. And we didn't know anything about him at the time. They came out first, and they were like, okay, you have to name him, and you have to take responsibility financially for him if we're going to do anything. And I was like, okay, I can do that. And they were like, it's a girl. I was like, okay, well, this is the name. So they went back, and they came back out 5 minutes later. Actually, it's a boy. Okay, so we changed the name. And luckily, I was not at work that day. So I ended up sitting for hours in this emergency vet as they came out every so often updating me, like, he's probably not going to make it. Please don't get your hopes up. He's in really bad shape. His left eye was completely deflated and just completely infected with green ooze. They thought they were going to take his eye out. And he had injuries all along the left side of his body. He couldn't walk. And we didn't know this for 5 days, but he was paralyzed. And so you could set him up on all fours, and he would stand there for a second, and then he would go, and he would sink right back down because he just couldn't stand. So after lots and lots of love and visits every day, this was an hour drive each way from where I live, we went down on day 5 to put him down because basically the vet said he's going to be a vegetable. Like, he is functioning alert, but he won't be able to do anything for the rest of his life. He will always be immobile, and he will be conscious, but that's about it. So I cried all the way down there because at this point I'm attached. And I walked in that morning, and the staff had fallen in love with him. And at the front desk, the girl had this huge smile on her face, and I was like, that's not the right expression for today. And so I walked up, and I was like, hey. And they were like, Leo took a step this morning. And I was just like, really? All by himself? Just one, but I'm like, you know what? He obviously has the will to live, and he obviously has the desire, so we're not going to put him down today. So that morning, we took him a collar, the little jingly collar. He liked it because of the noise. And we started going every day and working with him 2 hours a day doing therapy. He could only walk like 25 yards to begin with, and he only did circles. We didn't know why he only did circles, but it was his brain injury, and we found out he was deaf and blind on his left side. So that took a little while, but that's why his left ear is always floppy. He never puts it up unless he's dreaming. Then they're both up. So we worked for a couple of weeks trying to find him a home, because I was like, I wasn't looking for a dog. And of course, then everybody that we talked to were like, you don't really think you can take care of him because you don't understand everything he has going on. So anyway, he ended up coming home with me, and he has been the love of my life for 8 years. So he is in every photo shoot with me. He goes everywhere he can with me. Sad I couldn't bring him here, but he's not a big people person. So anyway, this is my passion, and this is why I love what you guys do. I couldn't imagine doing the work you do every day because I was just a wreck the whole time I was adopting and taking care of him. But I wanted to help make it possible for you to do this for more dogs and cats and guinea pigs and horses and everything else you're rescuing. So this is Leo, and that's our story, and now I'm going to tell you all about grant writing. All right, there he is again. All right, so we're in here. It's called Granted, Identifying, Applying for, and Managing Grant Funds. How many people in here have ever written a grant? That's a lot of you. How many people in here have never written a grant? That's a lot of you too. Okay, so there are no dumb questions. If you have a question, please feel free to ask. We have moderators in the room that have microphones. They will come around and get your questions from you. I'll try to answer all of those that I can. There's a lot of information that you need to know prior to starting to work on applications. And this is information you can gather for your rescues, but you need to kind of have all of this together. The official name of your nonprofit. How many people in here have an official name and then a name you go by? Like the one people know you by. You need to know both of them, and on your applications, you need to use your official name, and then there's usually a place they'll ask you, like also known as or whatever. You need to know your tax ID number, easy to find. Your date of incorporation. Now, I've talked with a lot of you this week, and what I've learned is a lot of you have been providing services before you incorporated as a nonprofit, before you filled out your paperwork. They want to know your date of incorporation, the date that your paperwork from the IRS says. So even if you've been doing it for 10 years and you just got your official status a year ago, they want that year ago date. Later on in the application, you can explain to them, we've been doing this for 10 years, but as an official nonprofit. How many people in here know what a DUNS number is? A few of you. Okay, a DUNS number is a number that you have to have in order to apply for federal funding. So if you've never applied for federal funding and you don't plan to, you probably wouldn't know what that is. You have to have that number. It's free. You can get it online. It takes about 48 hours. So if you need that information, just go Google search how to get a DUNS number, and you can do that. You need to know your street address and your mailing address in case they happen to be different. Phone, fax, social media information. A lot of funders now want to know your websites, your Facebook pages, your Twitter feeds, because they want to see what you're posting, who is following you, and the work you're doing in the community. They want to know that you have support. You also need to know your mission and vision statements. Now, how many people in here participated in the grant process for this class? How many people submitted a grant? Okay, we got 47 applications, and we're going to look at that at the end of the session. Some of you have really long mission statements. You don't need a mission statement that long. You need to be able to say to someone your mission statement in 1 or 2 sentences so they know what you're doing. Your vision statement can be a lot longer than that, but I got a mission statement that was a page long. That's too long, okay? So people want to know what your mission and vision is, what your fiscal year beginning and end date are. That's going to be pertinent for some grant applications. If you are on a fiscal year January to December, if you're on the military year and it's in September, if you're on a school year and it's in July, maybe you're on semesters. I've worked with organizations that have them all over the place, but you need to know what that is. What is your annual operating budget? How many people in here have an annual operating budget under $50,000? Okay, how many people have one under $100,000? Under $500,000? That's most of you. Over $1 million? Handful. Okay. A lot of times there are exclusions for budgets. So some funders may say, we only want to fund organizations that have operating budgets of $500,000 or less. Similarly, some organizations may say, we only want to fund organizations that have operating budgets of $500,000 or more. And it can be any number, $250,000, $1 million. So you want to make sure you're reading grant guidelines and you know what your operating budget is, so you know that you qualify with that particular donor. What are the programs that you offer? You need to know that if you're going to be writing grants, because you might be writing for one particular program, but you might want to reference other programs as you talk. So even if you're not working in those other programs, you need to be a little bit versed in what they are, at least be able to talk with people about them. You might be talking to a donor that is not interested in what you want to apply for, but you hear them say something and you're like, oh, we also offer this program, blah, 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 blah. Maybe you'd be interested in helping support that. If you don't know what those programs are and you can't talk about them in any way, you're going to miss an opportunity. You need to know the clients that you serve. How many people in here only serve animals in your county, the county that you're in? See, you need to know that because some donors want to support a region. Some donors only want to support that county. Maybe you're in another county and you serve a 5-county area. So you're going to be potentially eligible to qualify for grants from multiple areas. If you don't know the area that you serve or the clients that you serve, then you're going to miss out on some opportunities. So all you need is love. You need to create your needs list before you start doing grant research or start looking for donors. If you don't know what you need, it's very hard to find the donors and the grants that match with your needs. So it's true. All we need is love when we're working with animals, and that gets you a long way, but you also need your needs list. So I want you to sit down and write down all the things you need, your wish list, we like to call it, with dollar amounts beside those needs. If you know that you need one thing, put the dollar amount beside it, because as you start doing grant research, you're going to find exclusions, inclusions. People want to fund certain amounts, not certain amounts. People will fund certain things for spay-neuter, but not for equipment. People will fund equipment, but not spay-neuter. So if you don't know what your needs are, it might be hard for you to determine if it's a good fit. There's 7 basic proposal elements in almost every grant you're going to put together: a title, executive summary, organizational info, statement of need, project description, budget, and evaluation methods. You need to be able to have a section for each of these if it's asked and know what should be included in that, and that's what we're going to look at this morning. Titles are very important. Now, I had to create this and send it in this June, so I didn't know a lot of you at that point. I have heard some of the best names for animal rescues since I've been here. Some programs that you guys have are fabulous. So titles are important. I can tell you that some of the titles that I've learned about this week and how the titles came about are touching and humorous. So you guys need to have good titles. You have to have an executive summary that describes what your problem is. It needs to have a few key descriptors of your program or your project. Who knows the difference between a program and a project? Anybody? Yes? Projects are short-term, programs are long-term. Yes. You want to know what makes your program extraordinary. Okay? Extraordinary compared to another program of its kind in the field that you're in the state that you're in the county that you're in, what makes you stand out. We're going to talk about what that looks like in a second. And then how is your organization uniquely positioned? What are you doing that no one else in your area is doing? Okay? Those are 2 different things, and you have to know what they are. And if you don't know what they are, I encourage you to go back and talk with some folks at your organization and think about it, because that's what's going to set you apart in your grant application process. What are you doing that's different? So we are not going to read this. This is in your little handy-dandy app from the conference. But what I am going to do in a minute is read some of the applications that I received from pet rescues here. And animal welfare organizations. So your executive summary does not have to be long. This is an executive summary that we submitted for grant application through my company, and I highlighted for you, and you can pull it up on the PowerPoint in your app, where we put the description of the organization, where we put the key descriptors, and what makes our program extraordinary. So for this particular organization, what makes them uniquely positioned in the community is that they are the only after-school program in the county that exists specifically to serve the 1,150 Hispanic students that were enrolled in our schools at the time. There was nobody else doing it, so that makes them unique. Uni means one, right? So what are you doing that nobody else is doing? And I'll tell you, I've talked with a lot of my consultant friends. Sandy and I talked about it yesterday. A lot of donors do not want to fund a duplication of services. So if you're doing the exact same thing that 4 other animal welfare groups are doing in your county, you need to ask yourself, why are we doing it if they're doing it? Who's doing it better? Should we be collaborating? Our funder's going to want to give us money when there's so many other people doing the exact same thing in our area. So those need to be community conversations. We shouldn't be competing with each other in this field. We should be collaborating. And that's what donors want to see, is collaboration. Key descriptors, you can read through that and determine what describes your program, your project, or your nonprofit. And then what makes your program extraordinary. I put down an example here of what we've been able to achieve with the kids in this program, and it's amazing. So what have you been able to achieve? And we're going to look at some grants here in a few minutes, and I'm going to point some of those out. Organizational information you should include are things like we said, the name versus what people know you as, mission and vision, a brief history of your organization. If your organization has been around for 20 years, you want to give them 20 years of history. You want to do a synopsis. If you've only been around for a year, or maybe you just got your status, you want to say, well, what caused you to want to form this nonprofit? Give them that history. Your major programs and primary activities, awards, accreditations, collaborations, links with other organizations that do what you do, and then the number and capacity of your staff. For you guys, you also need to include the number and capacity of your facility. How many animals can you hold? How many fosters can you handle? How many rescues can you transport? These are the types of numbers you guys need to be looking at. If you have someone that calls you and says, we have 10 dogs that need to be picked up in 10 different locations of the city today, is that feasible? Do you have the capacity to do that? Do you have the carriers? Do you have the space? Do you have the staff? Do you have the transportation vehicles? And if you don't have the capacity for that, then you've already kind of started narrowing down what your capacity is. If you do, then you need to say, okay, what could we do? How much could we do today? If I have 10 kids that need to go to a soccer game today and I have a 7-passenger van, I don't have the capacity to take those kids. I have the capacity to take 7. So I encourage you to think about that and realistically create programs that you have the capacity to fulfill. And if you get to a point where you need to grow your capacity, it's because you have waiting lists. It's because you have more animals in your area than you can serve, and there's nobody else to do it. Or you need to start collaborating with other people to form bigger partnerships to serve more people in your area. So look at your capacity building, because there's grants out there for that. When you start writing grants, you need to figure out how you're going to introduce yourself. How many people in here met me at my booth or somewhere in the hotel this week? How many people in here that just raised their hand met me as the owner of Funding for Good? How many people in here met me as a friend of Sandy Reese's? How many people in here met me as Leo's mom? There's a lot of different ways that people can introduce themselves. Okay? I could be the daughter of Daniel and Frida. I could be the significant other of Ricardo. I could be the sister of Demian. I could be, I could be a lot of things. So how are you going to introduce yourself? Are you going to be the only organization that does this? Are you going to be the leading organization that does this? Are you going to be the first organization that did this? Are you going to be, there's lots of ways to introduce yourself. Are you going to be the executive director? Are you going to be the founder? Are you going to be a volunteer or a board member? Are you going to be a staff member? There's lots of different ways to introduce yourself. What's going to have the most impact on the person that you are talking to, the potential donor? Is it going to be more impressive to say, as the founder of the organization? Or is it going to be more impressive to say, as the leading no-kill shelter in our area, da-da-da-da? So you have to think about that. And so you introduce yourself. You also introduce your organization. What are you going to do with the money that you're asking for, and why does it need to be done? That is one thing that I will tell you was left out of majority of the applications that were sent to me for this grant cycle. I asked people what they would do with $500 to make an impact at their nonprofit, and most people just gave me a sentence or two that said something very simple like, we're going to put it towards spay-neuter, or we're going to put it towards our emergency medical fund. That doesn't tell me much. Definitely doesn't tell me why it needs to be done. I need some impact. People do not want to fund your existence. They want to fund your impact. And if you don't know what your impact is, you're going to have a hard time convincing donors to give you money. How much is it going to cost, and how are you going to do it? So you have to have a plan. Once you give me this money, this is what I'm going to do with it. This is how much it's going to cost me to do it. I was very impressed with several applications that we received that gave me very specific costs. This is how much it costs to purchase this, including the shipping, and this is exactly how much we need. Or this is exactly how much this particular thing costs. We've already raised X number of dollars. Your grant is going to help fulfill that, or whatever. With this money, this is exactly the number of animals we're going to impact with X, Y, or Z. And this is why. This is how much it costs. So as a donor and a grant writer, I always want to know, give me the breakdown. Don't make generic statements of, it's going to help our medical fund. That's just too generic. When and where will the program or project take place? So what you're doing, is it going to be in a city, in a town, in a county, in a region, in a state, across the nation? Where are you going to have an impact? And this is one thing I want you guys to think about. There's a difference between who you're going to serve and who you're going to impact. Okay, you could serve one dog, but you're going to have an impact on a community depending on if that was a street dog, that was a female, that got fixed, that also got shots, that's not going to have 2-3 litters a year over the course of her lifetime and contribute that many more homeless dogs on the street. So impact versus service are huge. Who's going to do the work? Are you going to do it? Do you have volunteers that are going to do it? Do you have a new person in the community that's going to do it? Do you have a vet that's volunteering their time? You know, who's going to do this work that you're raising money for? And what are their credentials? Why should they be the one doing it? If it's education, if it's outreach, if it's medical. And then what are the program and organization credentials to do it? There's a girl whose name I can't remember, who's probably maybe in here, who started her own nonprofit at 14. And at 14, it might have been hard for her to raise money because she's 14. And what kind of history does she have of success? What kind of credentials does she have? But now she has this wonderful, amazing nonprofit in Colorado, and I'm sure that some of you know her, and I can't remember her name. Anybody? She was at dinner at the ARF Club. I can't remember her name. Tall, tattoos, black hair, Colorado. Huh? Demi, yes. Yes, that's her, Demi. So, you know, you have to be able to say why the person doing the program should be the one doing the program. Just because somebody has a passion for it doesn't mean they should be the one doing it. I have a huge passion for animal welfare. I should not be a foster because I get to attach and I'd keep them all. So you got to know what your limits are and who needs to be doing your programs. So then you look at a statement of need. And this is something else that people kind of have a problem putting together in their grant applications, saying why you have the need, not just because, but you actually have to be able to establish a reason. So the 3 things you need to answer on that statement of need are why does the need exist, who has the need, and some data and statistics to support that need. Okay? So here's another one you can read. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. But I do have one that I'm going to share with you, I think, maybe. It's on my phone. Don't tell anybody. I hope I get my phone stuff in here. Ba-dum-bum, bum. Okay, here it is. So, if you know who this is, don't say. Some of you are going to know who this is. Okay, here's the need. The Growing for Good grant would fund 5 space surgeries. In our experience, now that's what a lot of people put, honestly, so I'm assuming space surgeries cost about $100 because I got that from tons of people. But they went on to say, in our experience, a female street dog has 2 litters of approximately 6 puppies twice a year, which means she has 96 puppies over her lifetime. Okay, that's an amazing statistic I didn't know. Because of the Growing for Good grant, 480 puppies will not be facing life on the street, and this number does not include the offspring of those puppies. That is a much more impactful statement to me than someone just saying, we're going to give 5 spay-neuters to dogs in our shelter, which is what I got a lot of. Now, I have a passion for animal welfare, but I'm not educated on all of it, so as a potential funder, you have to educate me. Just like any other grant you're going to put together. Just because someone has a grant for what you do means they have a passion for it. Doesn't mean they have a ton of knowledge about it. So educate them. In addition to that, they told me 2 other things. The Growing for Good grant would fund rabies vaccination for over 40 street dogs, sparing them from this deadly disease. See, I didn't know how much vaccines cost. Or the Growing for Good grant would fund the purchase of 1,250 pounds of kibble, which is over 4,000 meals for street dogs. That's a lot, right? Those are big numbers. That's a lot of impact. I didn't get this kind of information from a lot of people that filled out the applications, which means A, as a donor, I'm not as educated as I could be. And B, As a person asking for money, you guys have to educate me. I've heard a lot of people say this. I don't think I'm going to offend anybody when I say it, because y'all have said it to me all week. A lot of animal rescue people are great with animals. They're not so great with people. I mean, really, y'all have said that to me all week, right? And that's okay, but it comes across in the grant applications because you're so passionate about what you do in the work that you're just like, get it done, write it down, turn it in. You're not taking the time to realize the person reading it doesn't know what you know, so you have to tell them what you know. You have to be able to put that on paper and share it with them. Pick up the phone and call a donor. So I encourage you to think about what you do in those ways. Come up with some measurable impact that you can write down and put it in your applications. That is going to help you guys go way further in being considered for funds. So this is a great little page that you guys can take and use as a worksheet. Use it with your team meetings, with your staff meetings, with your board meetings. What is your need or problem? You could do this for each need or problem that you have. Just list it, plain and simple. Who has the need or problem? Is it street dogs? Is it people that can't afford to keep dogs in their homes because they've lost their jobs? Is it, whatever the group, is it 100 and some odd guinea pigs that you have? Got that one. Why is it a need or problem? Why does that group have 100 and something guinea pigs? Like, what caused that? Was it a hoarding case? Was it an overpopulation, too many males and females in the same place? What was the issue? What will happen if this need or problem is not addressed? That one is key. If you can't tell me what's going to happen, and this sounds horrible, but it's true, if you can't tell me something negative that's going to happen if you don't fix this problem, I'm going to move on to a situation that is a little more critical. Critical needs, right? So yes, there are those donors who have benevolence funds and they just want to give you money to offer surgery for a dog, but then you have the other donors who are like, I want to make sure that I'm preventing something bad from happening. So you have to talk to your donors and figure that out and give them what they want. The most important part of grant writing and fundraising of any kind is relationship building. It doesn't matter how good of a writer you are. It doesn't matter how important your need is. If you don't build a relationship with the potential donor that you're wanting to get money from, you're shooting yourself in the foot. I tell people that in every single workshop that I teach, whether it's on fundraising or donor relations or grant writing or capital campaigns, it doesn't really matter. If you're not building a relationship with a potential donor, then you're shooting yourself in the foot. So let me go ahead and ask. How many people in here who applied for this grant reached out to me and either emailed me, called me, or asked me a question prior to this event? Very few of you. I was shocked. Because I even said, contact Mandy with questions. I'm here. I didn't get hardly any. Nobody wanted to know what my passion was for why I wanted to start this grant application. And if you don't know what the reason that people want to give is, it's very hard to cater an application to their desire to fund, right? And then how do you know this information? Is it something that your supervisor told you? Is it something you've experienced? Did you find it in peer-reviewed journal articles? Has there been research done on it? How do you know that this problem exists and that it needs to be addressed? So think about these. In your project descriptions, you need to look at what's going to be done. You can have a great idea, but what I've often found in the nonprofit world, I'm going to use my partner Marie here because we write grants together and we've worked together for over a decade. She has so many great ideas. She is like the idea maker. And I am the put it into plan person. Like, what are we going to do to make that happen? But she has 1,000 great ideas. I don't have 1,000 great ideas all the time, and she doesn't always have a way to make it happen. So you may not be the person that can do all of that. I can't do all of that. But you need to know what's going to be done. So once you find what your problem is or find what you need to address, you need to sit down with the appropriate people and say, how are we going to address this? Is it going to be a program? Is it going to be a project? Is it going to be a collaboration? Do we need to go get someone to help us with this in the community? How are we going to address it if we get the money for it? In what order do those tasks need to be completed? So make yourself a list and say, this is what we need to do, and this is the order in which we need to do it, your outline. That way you can keep your yes, ma'am. It's on the app for the Best Friends Conference, and it's also going to be on Maddie's Fund. They're going to have it on their website. I'm not sure of the exact date, but I think sometime over the summer it should be available. I can't really see the back of the room. To my knowledge, the PowerPoints will be part of that.
And the PowerPoints will be coming out via a link in about a week from the Best Friends Conference. All the PowerPoints.
Yep. So no, you shouldn't have to write down everything that's on here. You're welcome. It's okay. You want to know how much time it's going to take. If someone comes to me and says, I need $500 to complete a catio for our nonprofit, and I'm like, all right, cool. How long is that going to take? And they're like, it should be done sometime next summer. Like, ooh, okay, that's not really quickly impacted. So, but if someone says, well, we've got everything else done, we're just looking for that money so it can happen tomorrow. Well, that's cool. I like to have an impact pretty quickly. So you want to know how long it's going to take. Don't go to someone with an idea and be like, oh, I don't know, we really haven't talked about a timeline. This is just an idea we've been throwing around. Have a plan. What resources are going to be required? Are you going to have to partner with people? Are you going to have to hire people? Are you going to have to create a program? Are you going to have to get training? What are you going to have to do to make whatever it is happen that you're wanting to do? And then how is it going to be sustained? That is the hardest question ever to ask. Sustainability plans. The best sustainability plan is program fees in year one will offset the cost in future years. We know that's not always the case, especially when we have people in need that can't afford it. So we have to get creative, and this is where diversified fundraising streams come in, which we're not talking about today, but I always encourage people to not have grants as a major line item in their fundraising plans. There needs to be a lot of other sustainability planning, which we do through development planning and fundraising plans. So we've got some project descriptions that I'm not going to read for you because I've got better ones over here, but these will be in the PowerPoint that you can check out that come out in a couple of weeks. This is a cool brainstorming matrix. It's just an Excel file that you can make. And you can sit down and say, what is it that we need to do? Who's responsible for it? When does it need to be done? How are we going to use resources to make it happen, and how much is it going to cost? So if you have a committee meeting for your annual fundraiser, you can say, Jane is going to do this by this time, and this is how much it's going to cost, blah, blah, blah. So at your next meeting, you can say, hey, Jane, did you do that by this date? And that way, everybody's accountable, and you don't have to keep up with it, and you're not micromanaging. I do this all the time. Marie does this all the time. We use it for board meetings, staff meetings, for any fundraising that we need to do. That way, we can keep track of it, and it's just easy. So how many people know what SMART objectives are? You need to have those in your grants. They need to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. I have seen people write very unrealistic things, and I wonder, do they know that's not realistic? But a lot of times they don't. So we have those conversations. If you write your objectives this way, it's going to be very easy for you to explain to a donor how you're going to accomplish things, because they're going to be written like this. I could say, I want to lose weight by the end of this year. I could lose half a pound, and technically I would have accomplished that goal. But if I said, I want to lose 5% of my current body weight by December 31st, 2015, that's a much more specific goal. I have a date, I have a specific measurement, and I know what I'm trying to attain, right? Decreasing something by a particular percentage by a particular date. So I encourage you to start writing things like that. I got people that wrote things like, we want to decrease the homeless population of dogs in the city. Yeah, that's pretty vague. You could technically save one dog and say you did that. But to be able to rescue a certain number of dogs from a particular neighborhood for this particular reason, get them chipped and get them with their shots and get them fixed, then that's much more specific. It tells me where you're targeting your time and your energy and how you're going to measure it. So then you have to talk about your project description. What are you going to do to accomplish your goals? So if you say you want to do one thing, how are you going to do that? What are the steps you're going to take to make it happen? If I want to lose weight, what am I going to do? I'm going to start walking 30 minutes a day, 3 times a week, beginning this particular week. I'm going to eat desserts 3 times a week instead of 7 times a week, starting on this week. So I'm going to list some very specific things that I can do to help accomplish that goal. And I'm going to state those in action terms. I'm going to decrease the number of desserts I eat a week by 4, beginning the 2nd week in October. Define the population to be served. So you need to say you're working in a particular city, a particular state, a particular county, whatever, whoever your target population is. And then make those measurable, include a timeline. So give them a date. I would say that the most generic date I'm comfortable with in grant applications is a season. Like, we anticipate completion of this capital campaign and completion of the first building project by spring 2016. That gives you a little leeway. It still gives the funder information on when you're hoping to be done, But when people say things like in 2016, that's too general. In fact, most of the time, as general as we get is by the month. We might say by March 2016. So it gives us 30 days, 31 days to work with, but it still lets the funder know when we're hoping to be done. So here's just an example. Your generic goal that you don't want to use, we want to serve more animals with our low-cost spay-neuter program. The SMART goal of the same thing is we want to serve 8% more dogs and cats in Pierce County with our low-cost spay-neuter program during fiscal year 2016. So that 8% is going to be based on whatever your numbers are from the previous year. Does that make sense? So you guys have to start thinking a little more about how a funder wants to see you measure things. And ask those questions. Call them and ask. That's what they're there for. So what's the most important part of grant writing? I already said it. Relationship building. Okay? If you don't take anything else away from this whole session, please remember that. The most important part of fundraising, grant writing, is relationship building. So generic objectives are things like, we will advertise our low-cost spay-neuter program. We will do community outreach events. And we will do community educational programs and events. The SMART objectives of those are, we will work with local media to begin a radio newspaper campaign in August of 2016 for a minimum of 6 months for our low-cost spay-neuter program. We will create a Facebook Twitter campaign in August that will be ongoing. We will hold one community outreach event quarterly beginning in the summer of 2015 to help bring awareness to our low-cost spay-neuter program. Each event will be held in a separate section of the county to increase exposure. We will hold or participate in a minimum of 6 community educational programs or events annually to help educate, inform, and empower the community on our programming beginning in September of 2015. Take them, use them, plagiarize them, create others that are similar to what you do, but that's the way you need to be writing things for your donors. It helps you too because it keeps you accountable. You're like, okay, this is what I need to do. I need to have 4 events. Let me go ahead and pick out some dates. Let me plan them. Because a lot of people have great intentions and they get so busy and they don't have goals or objectives, so they're not working towards something specific. And I know how it is in the nonprofit world. There's a crisis every day. So it's like, oh, I got to focus on this. If you have some goals and objectives written down for your organization, it's going to be easier to focus on those and hopefully accomplish them. You need to have a budget, and a well-prepared budget justifies all expenses, is consistent with the project description. So basically, if you write it into the project and say you're going to do it, it needs to be a line item somewhere on your budget. Basic parameters to consider when you work on your budget is what's the duration? Is this a 1-year budget, a 2-year budget, a capital campaign, a one-time clinic, a foundation fair? What are you trying to write? How much are you asking the donor to support? I had somebody ask me for $500 towards an $8,000 surgery that they hadn't raised the money for yet. For me, I didn't feel like my $500 was going to make a huge impact on that because I wasn't sure how long it was going to be before they were going to be able to find the rest of the money. So you need to know how much of your overall need you're asking your donor to support. If you have a $1 million capital campaign because you're going to go out and build your first facility, which I got some requests for, and I think that is awesome, and I want to tell you there is money out there for that. There's money out there for capital campaigns for what you guys are doing. Don't be discouraged. But my $500, I don't feel like it's going to make a huge impact on a capital campaign that's $1 million, so I'm probably not the right person to write a grant to for that. That's a waste of your time. And if you call me and ask me, I would tell you that so you wouldn't waste your time. It might be more feasible for you to look at donors who are going to be giving you $25,000 or more at a pop when you're going to be raising that kind of money. So know the level that your donors are willing to give. What is the level of resource commitment from your organization? How much are they going to commit? Do you have money in the bank? Are you going to do a fundraiser? Do you have money in general ops that you could put towards this project? Number, identity, and level of commitment of collaborating organizations. Are other people going to give you land? Other people are going to volunteer? Other people going to contribute labor or materials? Detail the commitments of those partners in your budgets, whether it's in kind, cash, other. Be generally specific. Don't write yourself into a hole. If you're going to write into a grant that you need postage, the only thing you can use that line item for is postage. So if you say $500 for postage and you don't use it all, you can't use it for anything else. However, if you put down marketing expenses and you don't use it all, you can buy envelopes with it, you can print copies with it, you can buy toner, you could have a travel brochure designed, lots of stuff you can do with that, because all that can be considered marketing. So generally specific, we like those kinds of line items. Anticipate change and be consistent. This is just a sample for you guys, a budget checklist of things that you want to think about to make sure you've included in your budgets. Again, when you get the PowerPoint, I encourage you to look through that. You're going to have some specific ones you want to add for your organizations for the type of work that you do. This one is pretty general. Success is not always what you see. So if I look at your organization and I can't see the success from the outside, I'm relying on your grant application to list it out for me so I know what it is, right? I love that picture. I wish it was in a high-res picture, but I couldn't find one. How are you going to evaluate the success of your project? How are you going to evaluate it? When does it need to be evaluated? And who needs to evaluate it? So you need to know all of that information. It might be that your funder says, I want a quarterly report, or a biannual report, or an annual report, or I want to come do a site visit. You're going to know all of that when you get the grant, so you need to be able to be prepared for who the person is responsible. Make sure that they know the deadlines, that they're getting the reporting done, that you're continuing to build the relationship with the donor by having them come for tours, site visits anyway, take them to lunch or coffee or whatever, invite them to a special event. These are some options for evaluation methods. This is a majority of them. And so I would say look through these, figure out which ones are going to work for you. Like I can think of one right now. What are the tests called when they get dogs in to make sure they're compatible with people and dogs and other animals? Is what? Yeah, behavior evaluation, temperament test and stuff like that. Yeah, so that would be one. You know, you want to see if they're passing those, if the dogs you're working with and taking in are doing well with those, and if when you work with them or you have a therapist work with them, if they are passing those tests if they didn't when they first came in. Those are evaluation methods that you guys can use specific to this field. And I'm sure there's a ton more. How many people in here have ever done a SWOT analysis? I highly encourage these for staff, programs, and organizations as a whole. You want to know from your SWOT analysis, which measures strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I will tell you, every organization has all 4 of those. There's no organization out there that doesn't have a threat. There's no organization, regardless of how bad some are, that don't have a strength of some kind. They all have opportunities, even if you can't see them right now. And they all have, what did I miss one? Weaknesses. Yeah, they all have them. Even if you're amazing, you have them. So, will the proposal you are writing solve or address any of the weaknesses or threats facing your organization? And it should. Will your proposal bring to fruition any of the opportunities listed? It should. Will your proposal give your organization a competitive advantage or build upon its existing strengths? It should. So, if you don't know what your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are, it's going to be hard for you to answer those questions. So I encourage you to sit down either as a staff or a board or a department and say, hey, let's talk about this. And everybody's going to have a different opinion. You know, somebody's going to be like, I don't like her. I think she's a weakness. And somebody else is going to be like, well, I hired her, and she speaks Spanish, so I think she's an asset. She's a strength. Everybody has a different perspective, and it's good to get those perspectives so you can see the way other people are looking at your programs, your projects, your staff, your whatever, your facilities. There's lots of options. Common mistakes are not having somebody read over your proposal before you submit it, lacking clarity, skipping relationship building, overlooking guidelines, chasing funding. I will say, without naming them, that I called several organizations after I received grants to ask questions, to ask for follow-up information. And there was one project in particular that I wanted to fund. It just touched my heart, and I wanted to fund it. And I called the organization and spoke to them, and I asked them to do one particular thing. And they didn't do it. And so I didn't pick them. And it was simple. So don't skip that relationship building. It doesn't matter if it seems important to you. It's important to the funder for some random reason. It could be anything. So make sure that you're doing that. Don't overlook guidelines. Guidelines are your roadmap to how to be successful filling out a grant application. Read them. And this is what I say. I've said it in my book. Do not write a single word in the application until you have read every word of the guidelines. I promise you. I have read grants before where the very last line of the grant guidelines let me know we didn't qualify. If I hadn't read all the way through, we would have wasted our time putting it together. Don't chase funding, which means don't find a grant and then be like, ooh, let's create a program for that. No, that is wrong. Write your needs down and find grants that meet that. Because I know a lot of people, we have a client right now, Her statement to me was they didn't have a program for this. They didn't have a project. She just heard the money that was out there, and she's like, well, I don't want to leave any money on the table. I'm like, you're not leaving any money on the table. It's not yours already. And she's like, well, I want to create a program for this. I'm like, do you realize how much work you're going to create for your organization? This is only $100,000. Like, this is going to be a lot of work for your organization. You're going to have to keep doing it after this 1 year. Like, it's not a one-time project. It's a program. She was like, I just don't leave money on the table. All right, let's write it. So don't chase funding. Don't start the writing process too late if you can help it. Don't have a sloppy or incomplete budget, and avoid not reporting back to the terms of the grant. So if they say, send us a report at the end of the year, send them a report at the end of the year. Okay, so remember to be proactive. It is your job to build relationships with donors, because you have nothing else to do, I know, all day, but it's your job. You know, they've told you their passion, now it's your job to find them and to make them want to give to you. Keep it simple, write to your audience. See, this is the thing, keep it simple. There were 500 words in each one of the sections of my application, and some people wrote it all in 100, and that was awesome, because I had to read less. But some people wrote 500 almost and still didn't really tell me what I needed to know. So make sure that you're writing what you need concisely and answer the questions. Write to your audience, which means you have to know who's going to be reading your grants, which means you have to do a little research on your end to figure out who's on the board or who's going to be reviewing the applications. That's one thing nobody asked me. Who's reviewing these applications? Is it just you? Do you have a group of people? Do you have a board? Like, who's going to be reviewing your applications? So nobody had any idea. Be authentic and demonstrate your passion. Make certain that all your proposal elements are connected. Have a second set of eyes review it. After receiving a grant, keep your funders informed. Make sure they know what you're doing, how well you're doing it, because you never know when they're going to connect you with someone else who wants to fund what you do or fund you again. People in the position of being a donor or people in the position of consultant to nonprofits that do any kind of fundraising, Sandy, myself, those like us, we know a lot of people. We know a lot of for-profit people. We know a lot of nonprofit people. We know a lot of foundations who might want to fund what you do. And if you don't keep us posted on what you're doing, it's hard for us to connect them to you. I cannot tell you the number of times I'm doing grant research, and I'm like, oh my God, this group I worked with last December, this is exactly what they do. And I go and like, what was their name? Blah, blah, blah. Find it, email it to them. Hey guys, saw this, thought of you, apply. Or I'll be talking to a funder, which you're gonna hear about in just a minute. And that funder says, oh my gosh, I love that. Can I help with that project? I'd love to help fund that. Well, sure, I'll take your money. So, keep people informed. Now let's talk a little bit about research. See how much time I got. Who learned something new from the grant writing part? Good. If you didn't learn something new, who was at least entertained? Okay. All right. Research. Money doesn't grow on trees. Don't we wish it did? However, my grandmother had one of those little money bushes when I was little. Y'all know what those are? I love those things. Types of support. You need to know what type of support you need, which means you need to become intimately familiar with everything on this list. This is a very good list. Normally this takes about an hour to go over. We don't have that kind of time today. So I'm encouraging you to go over this and learn what each type of support is and if it's a type of support you need. I know for a fact from the grants that I received that some of you need equipment. I know some of you need capital dollars. Some of you need building and renovation dollars. Some of you need general operating support. Some of you need travel for your transport of your animals, which could also be general operating dollars. And then some of you could go into the project grants and program grants. While it's still general ops, it could fall under those categories. So become familiar with these. You need to know that there's several different types of funding sources. You have individuals, corporations, government, and foundations. We don't have time to go into all of these in great depth, but I'll tell you that a majority of your support will come from individuals. It will be your longest lasting type of support. It will be the largest number of dollars over the course of their lifetime that you're able to get. You might get one large grant from a foundation, but it's not likely you're going to continue to get that every year. Foundations aren't going to leave you in their wills. They're not going to make planned gifts to you. They're not going to refer their friends to you. They're not going to volunteer for you. So individuals are where you need to be spending a lot of your time building relationships. I know a lot of people in a position of wealth who give, and they may start out giving a very small gift, $20, $25. because they want to see how you're going to steward that gift. They want to see how you're going to respond and how you're going to communicate with them and thank them for their gift and how you're going to keep them informed before they decide to make a $50,000 gift. We have people like that in Catawba County that I know personally. That's how they do it. So if you get a $25 gift from this person, you better work it. I have consultants that I know who do a little project every year. They send out 20, $25 or $50 gifts online to see how they're going to be stewarded. 18 of them don't get a response. 1 or 2 of them probably get a phone call and a letter. Now, I don't know how you guys send your thank you letters or make phone calls or thank your donors, but I'm telling you, you need to be doing it. Doesn't matter whether it's a $5 gift or a $500,000 gift. You need to write a handwritten thank you letter, and you need to pick up the phone and thank your donors. I know we're not talking about donor relations, I'm on my soapbox, but I'm saying you need to do it. And if you're not, you are shooting yourself in the foot for getting a return gift and being able to retain that donor. Think about yourself. How do you want to be thanked? You know, a lot of us are like, oh, I don't need a thank you. That's true, but people really want to get an acknowledgement. They want to know that you appreciate what they give to you. Government funds come in 3 levels, federal, state, and local. And I would say a lot of you are probably not getting most of federal funding because there's not a lot of federal funding for what you do. There's some, but not a lot. They're usually from state departments, like the USDA and places like that, depending on the type of welfare work that you do. Foundations, you guys get those. Private, corporate, community, family, there's a whole lot of that. How many of you guys got one of our calendars? People picked up calendars. We got foundations like crazy listed in there. They're not as easy to find as you'd think, but they're around that fund what you do. You guys can read through that. Corporations give. You need to build relationships with the corporations in your area because they don't necessarily give through a foundation. Sometimes they just give because they can. They have business sponsorships, corporate giving programs. They will work with you, and you can be on their budget every year. So a lot of times they may give in kind. Sometimes they give, through sponsorship of events. Sometimes they have volunteerism programs. So work with corporations in your area, and I don't know where you are, but you need to know the corporations that are there, and you also need to know who's coming in and who's leaving, because most corporations only give in an area where they have a corporate presence, where their employees are working or giving. Private foundations were established to maintain or aid charitable activities serving the public good. So they're established specifically to do good work. They have a mission, they have a strategy. Now here's the thing, they have to give away 5% of their assets annually. So if in the stock market, when the economy crashed, they lost money, they didn't have to give away any money that year. But this year, if they made money in the stock market, they got to give 5% of that away. So whatever their assets are. That's why giving programs fluctuate. Like, let's say Coca-Cola makes $5 trillion this year. They have to give away 5% of that. Well, let's say next year everybody decides sodas are bad for you and they don't want to drink that and they only make $1 million. They only have to give away 5% of that. So giving amounts can change, which is why I encourage people, if you're going to shop at corporate places, do it in your area. Because the Walmart in your area gives away to your area. And they do it based on sales, however much you're spending. So if you're like, oh, but the store over here is 3 miles closer to my house and it's in another county, that's cool, but you're giving money to that county when you do that. Not only just giving money to them, but you're giving money to their corporate giving programs. So I encourage you, learn who has a corporate giving program in your area, make sure you're supporting them. They usually give away through grants, and they are only able to give to tax-exempt organizations. I've had some of you come up to me and ask me this week about getting grants for yourself because you haven't started a nonprofit yet, but you're doing rescue work. They can't. They're not allowed to. It's not legal. Grants are time limited, so you can go look at that store. Corporate foundations, like we just said, funded by major corporations. Annual contributions vary relative to the profit of the company, and they usually give in communities where there's a corporate presence. Community foundations. Everybody in here familiar with the community foundation in your area? Raise your hand, yes. A lot of times community foundations won't fund animal welfare, but a lot of times they have donor-advised funds that are created specifically for animal welfare. So I encourage you to get to know your program officer for the community foundation affiliate in your area and find out if there's any support for the work that you do. Family foundations, same thing. Now, I'm going to tell you we're not getting way in depth into the research, but a lot of times you'll go online and a family foundation will say, we do not accept unsolicited proposals, which most people are like, okay, I must find another one. put it away. What that means is they don't have a formal grant process with a timed deadline that you have to submit something online. They still have to select people to give their money to. So you have to build a relationship with them. You have to figure out what the process is, and sometimes it's write a letter and send it to their corporate office. Sometimes it's write a letter and submit it to someone at the Family Foundation. I have very few experiences with Family Foundations saying they won't accept or consider a proposal. They are out there, and I can tell you how to weed them out, but most of them really do accept proposals. They're just not soliciting for them. So talk to me about that if you have a question. It's a process. Here for you is a worksheet you can fill out. You need to know what your geographic focus is. We talked about that a little bit ago. What area are you serving? What is your field of interest? Are you just doing spay-neuter? Are there other areas of animal welfare that you're focusing on? So write all your fields of interest. What type of support do you need from that first list on this? Are you looking for annual campaign, capital campaign, fundraising, gen ops, transportation, equipment? What do you need? What are the dollar amounts associated with each one of those needs? You need to fill that out before you start grant research. That's the stuff you need to be looking for. Different ways to do research. You go to the library. You could go to an office where you've worked and they've got a history development department, hopefully has saved places they've applied to before, grants they've received, monies they've been denied for. Look at similar programs. What is the same organization in the next state doing? Where are they getting support? Who is helping them? What is a similar organization in the next county getting their money from? Talk to them, build relationships. Go to the internet, network. You will find out about tons of opportunities through networking. I can tell you of people who fund what you do. So can other people that do what I do. Seminars and workshops. I encourage every professional staff to go to at least one a quarter. It can be free, it can be paid, it could be a lunch and learn, it could be a chamber networking event, it could be a webinar, it doesn't really matter. You need to be keeping yourself educated, moving forward, and you need to be meeting other people that do what you do, whether they are in the position to fund or in the position of what you do, because they'll know stuff you don't know, and you'll know stuff they don't know, and you can help each other that way. That's why we have conferences like this. Questions to consider when doing grant research. Does my program fall within the funder's area of interest? Some people would have known that their program didn't fall in my area of interest if they had called me first. Where will my project or program have an impact? Right? We talked about the difference between service and impact. Does the average grant size fit my need? If I'm only giving away $500 and you need $1 million, I don't fit your need. Will we be required to match the grant, and if so, by what percentage? So if I'm like, I'll give you $500, but only after you go raise $500 yourself, then you need to know that, right? Because you might not have the capacity to do that. You may not want to. Are we confident we can find the match? So if you think, okay, we can do the work, where are you going to get that money? You have to have an idea in your head of, are you going to ask a person? Are you going to write another grant? Are you going to go to a business? How are you going to do that? Are the funds paid up front, or is it a reimbursement grant? How many people in here, thought that was me for a minute. I was like, dang, I'm the speaker. How many people in here have ever worked with a reimbursement grant? They're kind of a pain, aren't they? Yeah. You need to know up front if it's a reimbursement grant and if you can handle it. So if you have questions about that, either call me, email me, or look it up online, what's a reimbursement grant. Grant funds can take 6 to 9 months to acquire. Will the grant dollars come in time for your need? So if you know that you talk to a funder and they're like, okay, we got your application, our board meets in 2 months, and then we'll decide, and then we'll let you know a month later, and then we'll write the checks the next month. You're like, our project starts next week. That might not be the grant for you. There are family foundations in smaller places and smaller community foundations that have a quicker turnaround time than that, but I'm going to say to you it is probably still going to take you at least a month to 3 months to get that money. Okay? Are there restrictions, like they don't fund faith-based, or they don't do transport, or they won't purchase equipment? So you need to know what their restrictions are, which you will learn from reading the guidelines. Build relationships. Even if you don't get funded this year, that doesn't mean you won't qualify for next year. So you need to ask for feedback. You need to say, why didn't we get funded this year? What would we be able to do to strengthen our proposal for next year? And then if they say to you, I just don't think our board's really going to fund the type of thing you do, then you need to hear that and say, okay, we shouldn't waste our time with this next year. Hear what they're telling you. But continue to build relationships and be proactive about it. Address your funders' priorities, their concerns, their values. which means you have to get to know them to know what they are. Have realistic expectations. Just because you need $5,000 and you ask them for $5,000 doesn't mean you're going to get $5,000. They may give you $3,000. Be realistically expecting not to get 100% of what you ask every time. And I'll tell you, even if a donor says to you, I think you should ask for $47,000, that doesn't mean you're going to get it. That just means they're saying, that seems like a realistic expectation. That's a realistic ask. Go ahead and put that down. I can't tell you the number of times we've written grants and they're like, ask for this, and we end up getting like 20. You're like, really? Okay. It's good, but have realistic expectations. Educate yourself on the organization you're working with. Read their websites. Find out why they're around, what they do, what they've done, previous grants they've given. Learn about them. So, successful fundraising is about relationships. Now, let's talk about this grant for a minute. I'm doing good on time. I want to ask a question. How many people in here have received a grant that you have written this year? Sweet. Okay. How many people have received a grant you've written this year that was over $10,000? 20. Couple? 30. 40. Okay, we got 2 in the back that are going at it. 50. 60. 70. Okay, how much did you get? Anybody in here get a grant for over $75,000 this year? How much was yours? Anybody in here get a grant over $200,000 this year? All right, I have a little surprise for you that Maria's going to bring back there. Congratulations. That's awesome. How many people in here have been to this conference before? How many people have been more than once? We're going to do the same thing. Twice? 3 times? 4 times? 5 times? Oh my gosh, how many times has it happened? 6 times? 7? 8? How many times have you been? Wow. Anybody else been longer than that? Because you can always learn something new, right? Continue building your skills. Awesome. Purple right there in the back. That's awesome. How many people in here wrote their first grant this year? How many people got turned down? How many of you contacted the funder to find out why? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. How many of you got information from that phone call that allows you to know what you need to do differently to reapply next year? Sweet. I don't have that many bills left, but congratulations. Okay. That's fabulous. You all need to be doing that. How many people in here know the first foundation that funded your organization? How many of you still have a relationship with them? That's awesome. I encourage you highly to learn that. If you're new at your organization, find out who helped you get started for where you are and continue to build that relationship. How many people in here are motivated to go home and write a grant? Hey, that's awesome. Woohoo! That's good. Okay. How many people in here have written a grant in the past month? I know some of you have because you wrote one to me. How many of you contacted the funder before you wrote the grant? How many of you decided at that point not to apply for the grant? 1, 2, really? Just 2 of you? Okay, I got that. Y'all put your hands back up. There were 2 of you. If you realize that it's a waste of your time to apply for a grant, then you need to just say, it sounded like a great fit, but we don't want to waste our time. And that's okay. I think we've gone through all of my questions for that. Sure. Yeah. They're bringing it.
Thank you. I have spent numerous hours. I have a volunteer who's a professional grant writer who, when she isn't writing her grants, writes grants for us, who have spent you would think she would have the know-how to do this, to find the information on some of these larger, for example, the company that we had a grant with was Pedigree. And we spent numerous hours on the telephone, on the internet, trying to find who within the Pedigree Foundation we could talk to about a past grant, a future grant, and so on and so forth. What is your secret to finding these people who are responsible within these large companies that we can get to ask these questions?
I'd like to speak with a program officer who deals directly with foundation grants. That's what
Program officer. Okay.
Yes, good question. A lot of times, if you will go, how many people in here are familiar with GuideStar.org? I highly encourage all of you to go get a free account on GuideStar. You can search 990s on there, and you can search 990s for foundations. So if you go and search the 990s for a foundation, you will find contact information and phone numbers and email addresses in that 990 for the person that is over the foundation that fields questions, and or they will give you a link to the website where they prefer that you go. So that would be my first start, and it's free. You don't have to pay anything for that. We have a great offer for you guys, only in this session because you're the only ones going to get it. We're going to do 25% off grant research. If your organization happens to need grant research, anytime between now and July 31st, you can register. Doesn't mean it has to happen now, but you're going to get a 25% off discount for that. So if you're interested, write that down, take it with you, take a picture. But we're also going to do a drawing. How many people in here entered the drawing for free research at my booth? Oh, one of y'all is going to win it. So I want a volunteer who's not, hey, will my moderator come up? Short-haired moderator. I don't know your official title, so I'm going to let you pick. Just one. Let's see who's going to get that. Hey, do we have the bags for the, yeah, we do. You just stay right there. You can say the name. Here, use mine.
Second Chance Sheridan Cat Rescue.
Woo! Awesome! Yay! That's awesome. Okay, wonderful. So you're going to get a free session of grant research with us. And somebody from this room today is going to get one of our books. And then we're going to announce our grant winners. That's awesome.
Catherine King.
Is she not in here anymore? Catherine King going once. Catherine King going twice.
Do you have to be present to win?
Yes. For the book? Yeah, I got it right here. Besides that, she has no information on here. I couldn't mail it to her.
New Leash on Life, Angela.
Hey, there you go. Sweet. Here you go. Yes. That's the book. She's like, I'm going to come up. Now we get to talk about this grant. Yay! Awesome. All right, so before we announce the overall winner, we are going to, we have a surprise that I just found out about yesterday. Can everybody see that okay? All right, you ready?
Hey y'all, I'm Sandy Reese of Get Fully Funded. I am so excited to partner with my friend Mandy of Funding for Good to do something that's kind of unexpected and surprising and exciting for you. Mandy and I have a great, unique relationship. And a lot of people were asking me this week, aren't y'all competitors? Yes, we are, but we also are collaborators. We know how to work together for greater good for everybody. And when Mandy started telling me this week about all the grant applications that she's getting in, about how cool some of the programs are, I wanted to play with her. I wanted to jump in. So I've decided to give a second place grant to an application that had incredible merit, an application that was done really well, it was written really well, well thought out. So Mandy and I looked at them together and we've picked a winner. So the winner, hey Mandy, why don't you tell them who won?
So, surprise, this is what happens when people that do what I do collaborate together. I was going to see. This is the response I got for how would your organization use $500 to create meaningful impact. Now, I did say you have to be present to win, so I'm really hoping this person's in the room. Many animals are lost in our area by visitors and travelers enjoying our rivers, camping grounds, and land for hunting. A new microchip scanner would allow us to return more lost dogs and cats to their owners more quickly. Our microchip scanner is 13 years old, and although we have tried to update the software, it does not always read or identify microchips. We drive found dogs and cats to our vet 17 miles away and ask them to scan the animals. This means animals picked up after hours or on weekends must wait to be scanned. A new pet scanner would cost $325 plus $7 to ship. And this is the one that Sandy is going to provide a $250 grant to Miss Judy Haywood. Is she in the room? Judy? Oh no, Judy! Are you here? Stand up because I can't see you if you have your hand up. Oh, I'm going to be heartbroken if she's not in the room. Really? She's not here? Oh. Is there anybody else from the rescue that Judy works with here? What? The Humane Society of McCormick County? Oh. Sadness. Pooh. Well, I guess we're moving on to the next one. All right, that just gave me a reason to read the next one. She'll be disappointed. I feel bad for her. We got time to read it, though, so here we go. And this is what happens when you don't show up like the funder told you to. All right, so this one is going to get $250 towards their project. Stress equals, this is so well written, by the way. Let me just tell you, this is the last grant that I received, the last one that came in. Stress equals illness. No stress equals happy cats. Happy cats equals less illness. Smaller vet bills and happy adoption experience. Approximately 20 cats live in our cat room, an 18 by 12-foot room with cat condos and cat trees. When a new cat is introduced to this community, the cat feels stressed and is prone to breaking out with an upper respiratory infection. If the cats had more space, more hiding places, and opportunities to stretch their legs, there would be less stress on the entire cat community. When we are awarded the $500 grant, we will use the funds to build a cat jungle gym in the cat room. Our local Lowe's will donate some of the materials, and a volunteer will donate his time to build the structure and make this a reality. We envision a structure that would cover 3 to 4 of the walls with several places to climb, hide, and play. We will build in places for litter boxes and activity center for play. We will make the structure portable, easy to clean, and modular so we can configure it differently to provide variety. This cat jungle gym will have meaningful impact in the following ways. It will provide more space for the cats to play without the major construction of building a larger room or addition, reduce the overall stress level in the room, attract media attention, make for a better adoption experience for both the cat and the human, and be a catalyst for more cat adoptions. That was very well written. Like that one a lot. Please tell me that Scott County Humane Society is somewhere in the room. Hey! Awesome. See me after the presentation. All right, so I want to say that there is another grant that I was exceptionally moved by, and while it did not win this application process, I am going to work with you individually to help you with this need. So is there anyone in the room from People for Animals from Hillside, New Jersey? Great application, love the project. I'm going to read it for everyone, and I'm going to help you with this personally. So see me after the presentation. When people are struggling to make ends meet, pets end up neglected, starved, and abandoned. People for Animals provides low-cost pet wellness services throughout North and Central Jersey, where up to 20% of people live below the poverty line in our target areas. PFA wants to expand our programs further to reduce the rates of abandonment and shelter intake. People for Animals has partnered with the Community Food Bank of New Jersey to launch a pet food bank program for disabled, elderly, and impoverished pet owners in New Jersey who want to do what's best for their pets but struggle to do so. Currently, we have only space to take limited amounts of food donations. The award of $500 will buy a large outdoor storage unit that will allow us to take 5 times the amount of donations and have a higher impact on pets and their owners. By alleviating the stress of feeding an animal for impoverished pet owners, we hope to see the great reduction of numbers of animals that end up in shelters or on the street. With this grant, we will be able to operate a high-capacity food bank that New Jersey so desperately needs. That was really well written. This is the winner. I'm so excited. I'm so excited about this. Okay, so this one's a little bit longer, but it's okay because it's awesome. While the capture and placement of core functions of Duck Team 6, our community outreach programs provide the foundation for the ultimate achievement of our mission. Should Duck Team 6 receive the Growing for Good grant, the funds will be devoted to programs that address 2 immediate needs of our street dogs, veterinary care and food. Because veterinary care is a necessity, Duck Team 6 has created programs to meet the significant need. We operate free vaccination clinics, free heartworm treatment programs, spay-neuter programs, and provide financial support for medical emergencies. By making free or low-cost care easily accessible, Duck Team 6 builds goodwill and trust within the communities most in need of our assistance. Our outreach programs ensure that dogs in underserved communities receive basic veterinary care while establishing relationships that will allow us to more quickly achieve our mission of reducing the street dog population. Through its vaccination clinics, Duck Team 6 has provided free vaccinations to over 1,000 dogs to date. Hunger is a constant for a street dog. To combat hunger and malnutrition, Duck Team 6 community outreach volunteers maintain feeding routes for street dogs, thus guaranteeing those dogs at least one meal not scavenged from a garbage can. And because outreach necessarily means presence, the feeding routes raise the visibility of a resource for those in the community wanting to help. Duck Team 6 has also partnered with Soup Mobile to feed the many street dogs who are cared for by the homeless. Each week, Duck Team 6 volunteer bags and deliver thousands of pounds of food to Soup Mobile for distribution. To date, Duck Team 6 has distributed over 36,000 pounds of dog food. Many programs, many volunteers, the single goal of helping street dogs. The Growing for Good grant will have an immediate impact on the lives in the Dallas area, both human and canine. We thank you for your consideration. Semper Wolf. That was one of the applications where I contacted them and said, I want a little more information. I want to know how many animals that you can feed with $500. I want to know how many vaccinations you can provide with that amount of money. And they got that back to me in about 30 minutes. And I have memorized it to date, which is what I read you at the beginning of the session on how many bags of food they can provide and how many pounds. And I am just thrilled to say that Funding for Good is going to be supporting Duck Team 6 for their first annual Growing for Good grant this year. Y'all want to come up? So we're going to get a picture, and then I'm going to let them tell you very quickly where the name Duck Team 6 came from. Because it's not on their website, and that's the other thing that you really have to know. Come on in. You're good. So you guys go ahead and tell them about that. And then I'm going to tell you about next year's grant for those of you that are going to be coming to the conference next year.
Well, it's a bit of lore in our organization, how the name came to be. We've gotten lots of questions. Our group started as a group of 5 friends who saw this major problem with street dogs in an area of Dallas that was incredibly underserved. And so they started out going on captures to try to bring in especially mama dogs to sort of break up the cycle of litter after litter of dogs being born on the streets. And they were getting started in 2010, which is right around the time of the bin Laden raid. And it was all the media and all the coverage of that. And so they were out one night at 2 a.m. trying to capture this elusive mama dog that had gotten them, a few nights. They just couldn't quite get her. And somebody commented, we've got to take the mentality that we're out here and we're like SEAL Team 6 and we're out here and we're trying to get this mission done and we've got to take that mindset. And of course, we're not SEALs. And someone said that and said, well, really, if we were going to be something, we're more like ducks. We're not SEALs, we're ducks. And so Duck Team 6 came to be.
That's how it came to be. Thank you, guys. See me afterwards.